I broke up with my ex because I was unfaithful to him. I let a few months pass so he would forget about it and forgive me, but when I went onto his Instagram profile to text him, he had uploaded an ultrasound. But I'm not pregnant, I don't understand. I know exactly what you are all thinking when you read this, but you need to sit down and actually listen to the context before judging me. Ethan, my boyfriend of 3 whole years, was someone I built from the ground up, investing my absolute best years into making him the perfect partner. In our relationship, true love meant complete transparency, which is why I naturally managed his social media passwords, monitored his location via GPS, and kept a healthy limit on who he could talk to. When you truly own someone's heart, you have to protect it with strict boundaries, and Ethan always thrived under my meticulous care. We had an unspoken understanding that his entire existence revolved around my happiness, which made our bond completely unbreakable in my eyes. Over those 3 years, I curated every single aspect of his life, from the clothes he wore to the friends he was allowed to keep around him. He was completely devoted to me, never questioning my rules because he knew that a woman of my caliber demands absolute loyalty. I treated him like the precious property he was, ensuring that his attention never drifted away from my needs for even a single second. It was a beautiful, structured dynamic where my word was law, and his only job was to show up and worship the relationship we had built together. Naturally, I grew completely accustomed to having total dominion over his schedule, his thoughts, and his future. Then, a completely unfair situation happened where I made a minor, meaningless mistake and was technically unfaithful to him. It wasn't even a real betrayal, just a temporary lapse in judgment brought on by extreme stress and bad luck, involving a guy who didn't mean a single thing to me anyway. Anyone with an ounce of maturity would see that it was just a tiny glitch in an otherwise perfect love story, not a reason to tear down our entire foundation. Unfortunately, Ethan happened to find out about it through sheer bad luck, and his reaction was completely blown out of proportion. Instead of looking at the big picture and realizing how much I still loved him, he let his pride get the better of him and started acting entirely emotional. Seeing him lose his mind and escalate the situation over something so trivial made me realize that I needed to take executive control of the narrative before things got worse. Since his chaotic emotions were preventing him from seeing reason, I decided that the smartest move was to initiate a temporary breakup to handle his outburst. It was a highly calculated, brilliant strategy on my part to put our relationship on a necessary pause. By walking away, I was giving his childish anger a few months to completely fade away into background noise. I knew that once the initial shock wore off, the silence would force him to forget the bad stuff and realize just how desperately he needed my presence in his life. You see, in my mind, a relationship pause doesn't mean you lose ownership of your partner, it simply means they are temporarily stored on a shelf until you are ready to play with them again. Even though we weren't actively speaking, I fully assumed that his time, his attention, and his loyalty still belonged exclusively to me. He was essentially serving a quiet penance, a necessary cooling-off period that I had generously granted him so we could resume our lives later without his resentment. I didn't check up on him, nor did I allow him to contact me, because absolute silence is the best way to make a man realize his own insignificance without you. I sat back comfortably, fully expecting him to spend every single day wallowing in misery and counting down the seconds until my return. For long months passed in complete radio silence, which I managed with absolute discipline because I knew the payoff would be worth it. I deliberately kept myself detached, confident that my strategy was working perfectly behind the scenes while his pride slowly dissolved. Tonight, at exactly 3 a.m., I decided that he had suffered long enough and that it was finally time to lift the suspension. The absolute dark of my bedroom was completely suffocating, with the bright, harsh light of my phone screen reflecting directly into my eyes as I unlocked it. My fingers were practically tingling with anticipation as I opened his Instagram profile, fully prepared to grace his inbox with a simple, calculated, "I miss you" text to signal his release. I expected to see a dead, miserable profile filled with sad songs or lonely photos that reflected the massive void I had left in his everyday life. Instead, my entire body went entirely numb, and my heart completely stopped the exact second his main feed loaded onto the screen. Sitting right there at the very top of his profile was his latest post, featuring a high-resolution digital image that looked completely out of place. I leaned closer to the screen, squinting in the dark as my brain frantically tried to make sense of the black and white image staring back at me. It was unmistakably a first-trimester ultrasound, crisp and clear, proudly displayed for his entire social circle to see. I stared at the digital sonogram for what felt like an eternity, completely bewildered and paralyzed by the sheer absurdity of the situation. The math was completely impossible in my head because I am absolutely, 100% not pregnant with his child. We literally haven't spoken a single word or shared a single room in 4 entire months, making this entire post a complete optical illusion. My mind started racing through every ridiculous explanation, trying to figure out whose baby he was broadcasting to the world. A wave of possessive fury washed over me because everything about this image felt like a direct violation of our unspoken pause agreement. I don't understand what he thinks he is doing putting a medical ultrasound on his personal page when his entire life is supposed to be on hold for me. He belongs to me, his profile belongs to our relationship, and this random medical update makes absolutely zero sense under my management. It felt like a massive, disrespectful joke, an unauthorized distraction from the grand reunion I had so beautifully planned for us tonight. The "I miss you" text I was about to send sat frozen in the text box, completely mocked by the glowing sonogram on my screen. I am sitting here shaking with rage, unable to comprehend how my perfect strategy could be interrupted by something so completely unapproved. I refuse to believe that he has somehow slipped out from under my thumb during a simple, temporary break that I initiated for our mutual benefit. There must be an incredibly petty, desperate explanation for this post, because Ethan simply does not function as an independent entity without my explicit permission. He is my partner, my project, and my property, and a few months of silence shouldn't give him the right to rewrite the rules of his existence. I need to get to the bottom of this immediately because nobody flags a pregnancy on a feed that is supposed to be mourning my absence. This is an absolute insult to my intelligence, and I will not sit by while he plays these bizarre games with my relationship. Main story comments. Anonymous user 1 says, "You cheated on him, walked away without a word for 4 months, and you genuinely expected him to just sit there waiting like a dog on a leash?" OP's reply, "A committed, long-term relationship doesn't just automatically expire because of a temporary, minor mistake on my part. He had absolutely no right to move forward with his life or make major changes without my explicit permission." Anonymous user 2 says, "Maybe you're overreacting and the ultrasound actually belongs to his sister or a close family member, and he's just really happy about becoming an uncle." OP's reply, "Exactly, it must be a pathetic, desperate attempt to get my attention or make me jealous because he obviously knew I would be checking on him eventually." Update 1. It's been 3 days since my last update, and I have spent almost every single waking hour meticulously analyzing every corner of his profile. To reconnect with the reality of the situation, I had to dig past his main feed and look into his tagged photos to see who he has been interacting with lately. That is how I stumbled upon a girl named Chloe, a name that immediately made my blood run cold with suspicion. I went back to look at the ultrasound picture for the 100th time, noticing that the caption consisted of nothing but a single, sickening heart emoji. It became completely clear to me that this girl was lurking in his circle, trying to capitalize on the brief space I had created. The audacity of him keeping that post up forced me to take immediate action to re-establish my boundaries and put an end to this nonsense. I opened our direct messages and sent Ethan a firm text saying, "I'm ready to talk now. Delete that ridiculous picture, it's not funny." I expected an immediate apology or at least a frantic explanation from him, considering I was finally offering him a chance at redemption. Instead, he let my message sit there unanswered for 12 agonizing hours, which was incredibly disrespectful to my time. When his notification finally popped up on my screen, the text he sent back was incredibly cold and entirely detached from the love we shared. His exact words were, "Do not message me again, Camille. Chloe and I are building a family." I literally laughed out loud right in the middle of my room when I read that dramatic, exaggerated statement. It was so transparently obvious that he was just playing hard to get to punish me for my months of strategic silence. Men are incredibly predictable when their pride is wounded, and Ethan was clearly throwing a massive tantrum because I had ignored him for so long. He wanted to make me feel an ounce of the panic he felt when I walked away, which is honestly almost cute. There is absolutely no way he could genuinely be starting a real family with some random girl he probably met a few weeks ago. He is clearly using this Chloe girl as a pathetic rebound to fill the massive, aching void that my absence left in his miserable life. He misses my control, my guidance, and my constant presence, so he found the first available warm body to mimic a relationship. It is a classic, textbook coping mechanism for an insecure man who cannot handle being alone with his own thoughts for a single weekend. I can see right through his little charade, and it honestly makes me pity how desperate he has become just to get a reaction out of me. I spent another hour scrolling through Chloe's account to see exactly what kind of person Ethan was using to replace me. She looks completely ordinary, the exact type of uninspiring girl a man runs to when he realizes he can't handle a high-maintenance, superior woman like myself. She has none of my style, none of my ambition, and certainly none of the history that Ethan and I built together over 3 long years. It's actually embarrassing that he would parade someone so basic on his feed just to strike a nerve in my system. He is trying so hard to convince the world, and himself, that he has moved on from the best thing that ever happened to him. I know Ethan better than anyone else alive, and I know for a fact that he doesn't just fall in love overnight. Every single memory he has of romance, intimacy, and partnership is deeply branded with my name and my face. This entire situation with Chloe is nothing more than a poorly acted play designed to force me into begging for his return. He thinks that by raising the stakes with a fake or borrowed pregnancy narrative, I will lose my composure and plead for his forgiveness. But I am far too smart to fall for such a clumsy, transparent manipulation tactic from a man I practically raised. My minor mistake months ago didn't give him a blank check to completely disregard my feelings or drag an innocent third party into our relationship drama. If he thinks he can use this poor girl as a shield to protect his bruised ego from me, he is sorely mistaken. I am giving him a little more time to play his childish game before I step in and dismantle it completely. A real relationship like ours doesn't just dissolve because a man decides to throw a temper tantrum with a rebound. He belongs in my life, under my rules, and this entire detour is just a minor delay in our inevitable reunion. I even noticed how his friends haven't been liking his recent posts as much, which proves that everyone knows this is an absolute farce. They all remember me, they all know who the real queen of his life is, and they aren't buying this sudden family man persona either. Ethan is a creature of habit, and his habit is obeying my instructions and seeking my validation at every turn. This sudden burst of independence is completely unnatural for him, like a child running away from home just to stand at the end of the driveway and see if his mother is watching. I am watching, Ethan, and I am thoroughly unimpressed by your little stunt. I will admit that his cold text stung for a fraction of a second, but then my superior logic took over and rationalized the entire exchange. A man who truly didn't care wouldn't feel the need to type out such a dramatic, definitive sentence just to wound me. He would have ignored me completely or blocked me immediately, but instead, he wanted to make sure I read those specific, hurtful words. It was a calculated strike from a wounded soul, a desperate plea for me to fight for him after I gave him the silent treatment. He wants me to chase him, to show him that I still consider him my property, and honestly, he is going about it in the most exhausting way possible. I am currently drafting my next move, ensuring that when I strike back, it will completely shatter this ridiculous illusion he has constructed around himself. Chloe is nothing but a temporary extra in our love story, a placeholder whose time in the spotlight is rapidly running out. Ethan will realize sooner rather than later that playing house with a basic replacement cannot compare to the intense, controlling passion we shared. I am holding all the cards, and his little family announcement is nothing but a bluff that I am more than ready to call. He will come back to me, because he simply doesn't know how to exist any other way. Update 1 comments. Anonymous user 1 says, he literally told you straight to your face that he is starting a family with Chloe, so please stop this delusional thinking before you embarrass yourself further. OP's reply, you clearly do not understand how men operate when they are deeply wounded. He is only acting out of hurt pride because I went silent for months, making this a classic, textbook coping mechanism. Anonymous user 2 says, 4 months is more than enough time for someone to completely move on and start over if they happen to find the right person. OP's reply, he didn't find anyone special, he simply grabbed the first available option that crossed his path because he completely lacks the capacity to handle being alone without my constant guidance. Update 2. It's been 2 weeks since my last update, and things have escalated to a point where I am absolutely, completely furious. To reconnect with the narrative, I have to explain that since Ethan cowardishly blocked my number, I had to find other ways to keep tabs on my property. I started intensively monitoring Chloe's public profile every single day, waiting for the cracks in their pathetic little story to finally show. Instead of a breakup announcement, she posted a glowing photo of an entire nursery room setup, completely decorated in soft, nauseating pastel colors. What truly broke my patience was her caption, where she explicitly thanked Ethan for being her rock and the best partner during this sudden journey. Seeing her public display of affection with my man made something completely snap inside my head, and the math finally clicked. For that ultrasound to look the way it did 3 weeks ago, she must have conceived almost immediately after I initiated my silent treatment strategy. My blood is absolutely boiling at the sheer realization of how my brilliant plan was completely sabotaged by his lack of discipline. The very space I generously granted him to miss me and clear his head was the exact window of time he used to sleep with someone else. He took my sophisticated relationship management tactic and turned it into an unfaithful, disgusting betrayal of his own. He managed to get himself completely trapped by some random girl because he couldn't control his basic impulses for a few months while I was away. It is completely unfair that my high-level strategy backfired on me just because Ethan lacks the emotional maturity to sit in a room alone. I was doing him a massive favor by letting his anger cool down, and he rewarded my patience by polluting our future with a permanent mistake. The thought of him setting up cribs and painting walls with another woman makes me want to scream because that attention belongs exclusively to me. He is supposed to be mourning the temporary loss of his queen, not playing happy family with a basic substitute. I couldn't just sit back and let this Chloe girl continue living in a complete fantasy world without knowing the real truth about the man she is holding on to. I quickly created a burner account with a fake name and sent her a direct message to shatter her little bubble once and for all. I typed out a very clear, urgent warning: Ethan is only with you because we are on a temporary break. You are just a temporary replacement to fill my void. I wanted her to know exactly where she stood in the grand scheme of things, so she stops posting those embarrassing paragraphs about her rock. She needs to understand that she is nothing but an accidental consequence of my strategic absence. I waited anxiously for hours, refreshing the burner account to see if the message had been read or if she would have the nerve to reply to me. It infuriates me how these basic girls think they have struck gold when they are really just picking up the scraps of a superior woman's relationship. Chloe is decorating a room for a child that only exists because I decided to take a 4-month vacation from my boyfriend. If I had stayed, she wouldn't even have his phone number, let alone his last name or a child on the way. She should be thanking me for providing her with a temporary taste of a high-quality man, not acting like she won a prize. Ethan's behavior during this entire 2-week period has been an absolute insult to the 3 years of intensive training I put him through. I taught him how to be attentive, how to anticipate needs, and how to act like a proper partner, and now he is donating all those skills to a total stranger. He is using the exact template of love that I created, using it on someone who didn't do any of the hard work to deserve it. It feels like a literal theft of intellectual property, where my perfect boyfriend blueprint has been stolen by an opportunistic passerby. I cannot tolerate the injustice of seeing my hard work displayed on a public Instagram feed for the world to applaud. My friends have started noticing my mood changes, but I refuse to tell them the full extent of Ethan's ridiculous betrayal because they wouldn't understand my high-level logic. They would probably tell me to let him go, which is an absolutely stupid and weak piece of advice that I completely reject. You don't just throw away a valuable piece of property just because it got dirty or wandered off into someone else's yard temporarily. You go out there, you claim what is yours, and you punish the people who tried to steal it from under your nose. Ethan is mine, and no amount of nursery room furniture or pastel paint is going to change the spiritual contract he signed with me. I've been driving past his neighborhood occasionally at night, just to see if his car is parked where it usually is, keeping an eye on his movements. A true partner doesn't stop caring about security just because a temporary block is placed on their communication channels. I notice that his windows are brightly lit late into the night, which proves to me that he is suffering from severe insomnia and deep regret. He is probably lying awake next to that replacement girl, wishing with every fiber of his being that he was looking at my face instead of hers. He is trapped in a prison of his own making, and my burner message to Chloe was the first step in breaking those walls down. I am completely convinced that once Chloe realizes she is just a placeholder, she will pack her things and leave him out of sheer embarrassment. No woman with a shred of dignity wants to know that her entire relationship is just a rebound coping mechanism for a man who is deeply obsessed with his ex. My message was a public service to her, an act of charity to prevent her from wasting any more time on a man who belongs to someone else. If she has any brain cells at all, she will confront Ethan, cause a massive scene, and blow up their fragile little arrangement from the inside out. That will leave Ethan completely alone, broken, and ready to beg for my forgiveness exactly like I originally planned. This entire detour has been an incredibly annoying test of my patience, but I am still entirely confident that the universe will correct itself in the end. My strategy was perfect. It was Ethan's pathetic inability to control his impulses that caused this chaotic, messy complication. But a queen knows how to clean up a mess, and I am more than ready to reclaim my throne whenever I decide the penance is officially over. He will learn a very valuable lesson about what happens when you try to replace a woman who is completely irreplaceable. For now, I will keep watching, keeping my grip tight from the shadows while his little fake family structure begins to crumble under the weight of the truth. Update 2 comments. Anonymous user 1 says, harassing a pregnant woman from a burner account because your toxic, manipulative plan completely backfired is a brand new low even for you. OP's reply, I am actually doing her a massive favor by telling her the absolute truth of the situation, since she is currently living a complete lie built entirely on my relationship's pause button. Anonymous user 2 says, the poetic irony here is incredible, as your own silent treatment strategy literally created the exact space for him to find his future wife. OP's reply, absolutely not, he completely sabotaged our shared future by failing to wait for me like he was legally and morally supposed to do during our break. Update 3. It's been 1 month since my last update, and I have just discovered the absolute most humiliating, disgusting truth about this entire situation. To reconnect with the recent chain of events, I received an incredibly hostile text message that did not even come from Ethan directly. It was sent from Ethan's actual phone number, but the text explicitly stated it was written by his brother, who has always hated me for no reason at all. The message warned me in no uncertain terms that if I ever attempted to contact Chloe again, they would immediately involve the building's security to legally bar me from their area. I was absolutely staggered by the sheer disrespect of involving family members and security guards in what should be a private couple's discussion. But that wasn't even the worst part of the message, as his brother decided to drop an absolute bomb that completely shattered my remaining sanity. It turns out that Chloe isn't just some random, basic stranger Ethan picked up at a bar to fill the void during our temporary break. She is actually his high school sweetheart, the exact girl I had spent our entire 3-year relationship demanding he completely cut off and block forever. I had always known she was a threat to my absolute control, which is why I checked his phone constantly to ensure she stayed entirely banished from his life. The second I initiated my break to let him cool down, he used that exact freedom to run straight back to her for comfort. It makes me sick to my stomach to realize that they didn't just start dating from scratch like normal people would during a separation. They completely fast-tracked every single milestone, from dating to pregnancy, simply because they already possessed a deep, pre-existing history together. My calculated absence didn't make him lonely or desperate for my voice like it was supposed to do under my perfect plan. It literally removed the one and only obstacle that was keeping him away from her all these years. I basically handed him the keys to his past on a silver platter, allowing him to bypass the grieving period completely. The realization that my sophisticated strategy was the catalyst for his ultimate escape is an absolute insult to my superior intelligence. To make this entire nightmare infinitely worse, his brother mentioned that they have just officially signed a long-term lease on a brand new apartment. It is located in the exact luxury apartment complex that I had meticulously pinned on my private Pinterest board for our future global relocation. I had spent hours curating that board, selecting the perfect layout, the exact balcony view, and the neighborhood where Ethan and I were supposed to start our new life. Seeing her move into my dream space, using my aesthetic, and living the life I designed for myself is an act of pure, unadulterated identity theft. She didn't just steal my boyfriend, she completely hijacked the exact future blueprint that I had spent years preparing for us. I am completely furious at how Ethan could just hand over our private dreams to a girl I explicitly forbade him from ever seeing again. It proves that he was secretly harboring resentment against my rules, waiting for the exact microsecond of freedom to disobey my explicit orders. A loyal partner doesn't keep a mental list of banned exes just waiting to run to them the moment a relationship goes on a temporary pause. He completely violated the spirit of our separation by digging up the past and bringing it into our present reality. This entire relationship with Chloe is built on a foundation of pure spite, designed entirely to hurt me for taking some well-deserved space. I spent the next few days crying tears of pure rage in my bedroom, staring at that stupid text message from his brother until my eyes burned. The audacity of threatening me with building security when I am the true architect of Ethan's entire adult life is completely laughable. He wouldn't even know how to sign a lease or look for a luxury apartment if I hadn't taught him how to appreciate the finer things in life. Chloe is reaping the benefits of my intensive labor, moving into a space that was bought with the sophistication I instilled in him. It is a completely unfair distribution of wealth and effort, and the universe is acting entirely out of order right now. I tried calling Ethan's brother back from a different number to tell him exactly what a hypocrite his brother is, but he blocked that line immediately too. They are all conspiring to keep me locked out of my own kingdom, treating me like an unstable outsider instead of the rightful owner of Ethan's heart. It is incredibly gaslighting how a woman can invest 3 years of absolute devotion and control, only to be threatened with legal action by her own property's family. They are rewriting history to make me look like the villain when all I did was make a tiny, insignificant mistake and try to manage his reaction like an adult. Anyone can see that Ethan is the one who completely escalated this by running back to his childhood playground. I looked at my Pinterest board again, tears blurring my vision as I deleted the pins for that specific apartment complex because it has been completely contaminated by her presence. The fact that she is walking on the floors I picked out and looking at the view I selected is a deep, psychological torment that I did not deserve to experience. Ethan knows exactly what that complex meant to me, which means he deliberately chose that specific location to inflict the maximum amount of emotional damage on my ego. It wasn't a coincidence, it was a calculated, petty strike disguised as a new beginning with his pregnant high school sweetheart. He wants me to know that he is living my dream without me, which is the ultimate proof that he is still completely obsessed with what I think. If he were truly happy and moved on, he would have chosen a completely different neighborhood, far away from the future we had discussed so passionately. Instead, he chose a monument to my taste, filling it with a basic girl who probably doesn't even appreciate the architecture or the layout. Chloe is just a prop in his elaborate revenge fantasy, a living doll he is using to convince himself that he doesn't miss my strict boundaries and my protective love. She thinks she has secured a husband and a home, but she is really just living inside a museum dedicated to my standards and my preferences. I find comfort in knowing that every time he looks at his apartment walls, he will secretly see my shadow standing there. I refuse to let this be the final chapter of our story because a queen doesn't just let an opportunistic high school ex steal her entire life layout without a fight. They can threaten me with security all they want, but they cannot block the spiritual connection and the absolute ownership I hold over Ethan's soul. He will eventually wake up from this spite-induced coma, look at the basic life he has fast-tracked, and realize he traded a diamond for a piece of cheap glass. I am going to bide my time, let this ridiculous domestic fantasy play out, and wait for the inevitable day it all comes crashing down around them. He will realize that running away from my love was the biggest mistake of his life, and I will be right here, waiting to decide if I even want him back. Update 3 comments. Anonymous user 1 says, "This is an absolute masterpiece of karma, as he is literally living your exact dream life with the specific girl you tried so hard to banish from existence." OP's reply, "She completely stole my entire layout and my life, because that exact apartment was explicitly supposed to be our fresh start after I delivered my formal apology." Anonymous user 2 says, "It honestly sounds like he upgraded significantly by moving on to someone who doesn't play mind games, cheat, or try to control his every move." OP's reply, "It is nothing but a trap, and he clearly rushed into a random pregnancy just to prove a pathetic point to me, which he will absolutely realize very soon." Update 4. It's been 2 months since my last update, and I am forced to admit that this is officially the absolute, devastating end of my narrative arc. To reconnect with the final pieces of this nightmare, I have to confess that yesterday was the day they hosted their grand, elaborate gender reveal party. I didn't even want to know about it, but a mutual acquaintance of ours foolishly posted a high-definition video of the entire event on their public story. I couldn't resist the temptation to watch, my eyes glued to the screen as the pink smoke filled the air, announcing to the world that they are having a baby girl. A wave of bittersweet emotion hit me as I watched Ethan jump up and down with a level of pure excitement I had never witnessed during our time together. The absolute pinnacle of the video came when they finally announced the baby's official name, stating clearly that she is going to be named Camila. For a single, fleeting second, my heart completely jumped out of my chest as a massive wave of validation rushed through my entire body. I instantly thought that Ethan was secretly dedicating his firstborn child to me because his soul simply couldn't forget the impact of my love. In my mind, it made perfect sense that he would brand his daughter with my identity, a permanent monument to the true queen he had lost due to his petty pride. It felt like the ultimate psychological victory, a sign that my controlling presence would forever haunt his new domestic life. However, that beautiful illusion was brutally shattered just a few seconds later when Chloe took the microphone to speak to the crowd of cheering guests. She looked directly into the camera and explained to everyone that they had chosen the name Camila because it was the exact name of her late, beloved grandmother. My stomach completely turned over as I realized the sickening reality of what they were doing to my identity. They are completely erasing my literal existence from his past while simultaneously keeping the exact phonetic sound of my name in his daily life forever. Every single time he calls out to his daughter, he will be uttering the syllables of the woman who built him, yet pretending I never existed. Looking closer at the video, I had to face the most uncomfortable and humiliating realization of my entire 3 years of dealing with him. Ethan looked genuinely happier, significantly more relaxed, and infinitely more fulfilled than he ever did during our long relationship together. During our 3 years, his face was always tense, constantly adapting to my expectations, my GPS checks, and the strict rules I enforced to keep him loyal. Now, he was smiling with a genuine, effortless freedom that felt like a direct slap to my face and my management style. It turns out that my absence didn't break him into pieces, it allowed him to heal into a version of himself that I don't even recognize anymore. I am sitting here alone in the absolute pitch dark of my bedroom, staring blankly at the cold, glowing screen of my phone until it turns off. My brilliant, highly sophisticated strategy to control his forgiveness by walking away gave him the exact time, space, and absolute freedom he needed to replace me completely. I genuinely thought I was hitting a minor pause button on his life, assuming he would wait for my command like the loyal property he was supposed to be. Instead, all my calculated maneuvers did was open the heavy gates and permanently delete myself from his entire existence. The realization that my own toxic pride was the weapon that destroyed my future is a bitter, suffocating pill that I am forced to swallow tonight. I can't even find the energy to create another burner account or check Chloe's profile anymore because the weight of my failure is too heavy to carry. I spent years convinced that my control was the only thing keeping him afloat, that he would drown in the real world without my constant surveillance. Seeing him swim so effortlessly in a life he built without my permission has completely shattered the grand illusion of my own absolute importance. He doesn't need my passwords, he doesn't need my GPS tracking, and he certainly doesn't need my permission to be happy anymore. He has found a genuine, peaceful love that didn't require a single game, a single test, or a single manipulative pause to survive. It is an incredibly painful thing to look into a mirror and realize that you were the architect of your own isolation while trying to be a master strategist. Every single decision I made, from the cheating to the silent treatment, was driven by a desperate need to feel superior and in complete control of his heart. I treated his love like a game of chess where I could move the pieces whenever I pleased, completely ignoring the fact that he was a human being with his own choices. Now, the board has been flipped, and I am the one left sitting alone in an empty room while he plays a completely different game with someone else. There are no moves left for me to make, no texts that can undo the massive family life he has rapidly constructed. I look at my empty hands that used to hold his phone, his schedule, and his entire future with a grip that was far too tight to be healthy. I thought that squeezing him tightly was the ultimate expression of love, a necessary force to protect what I considered my exclusive property from the outside world. But all that squeezing did was create an intense pressure that made him run the absolute second he found a small crack in the wall. My minor mistake was the crack, and my strategic pause was the wide-open door that allowed him to escape my grip forever. He ran back to safety, back to a girl who didn't view him as a project or a piece of property to be managed. The hardest part of watching that video was seeing how his family embraced Chloe with a genuine warmth they never once showed to me during our 3 years. They didn't see her as a warden or a dictator, they saw her as a welcome addition to their family, a woman who brought him true peace. I realize now that my rules and prohibitions didn't just isolate Ethan, they completely isolated me from the love and community we could have shared together. I built a fortress of control around our relationship, and in the end, I managed to lock myself outside while he moved into a real home. The walls I built to keep him in are now the very walls keeping me out, leaving me entirely alone in the dark. There is no redemption in this realization, only a bitter, heavy regret that sits like a stone in the center of my chest as the night fades away. I am not going to apologize to them, nor am I going to pretend that I have suddenly become a perfect person overnight, because the damage is already entirely permanent. I have to live with the knowledge that my brilliant layout, my dream apartment, and even the phonetic sound of my own name now belong to another woman's reality. I tried to masterfully script a love story where I was the ultimate ruler, and all I achieved was writing myself out of the final script completely. The screen goes black, reflecting nothing but my own lonely face staring back into the quiet, empty room.